I want to bring in MSNBC host and associate editor of The Washington Post, Jonathan Capehart. He is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, by the way, for all of you to know that. Also here with us, former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. It's good to see you, Mr. Mayor. You too, Jonathan, there in D.C. So, Mayor, the governor posted on X, quote, here it is, "We won't let Trump use New Yorkers as roadkill on his revenge tour." Can she take on the president over this? I'm curious kind of the options that she would have, both in terms of city and state, to her.
First thing to say, Alex, is he ain't no king around here. It's really important to remember that this city rejected this man who was born here, grew up here, came to fame here, rejected soundly in 2 elections by New Yorkers. And now thinking he can dictate how we run our lives, our roads, our subways. Congestion pricing is all about saving the subways. Let's be clear, the lifeblood of New York City. Kathy Hochul, I think, can do a lot to fight back. One of the things I learned as mayor, working for 4 years during the Trump administration, is the Constitution actually gives a lot of power to states, and by extension, even localities, to fight back against arbitrary federal actions, because the Constitution was built by a group of founders who didn't want a totally strong national government, or obviously did not want a king or an all-powerful president. So they put lots of trapdoors and lots of checks and balances. Kathy Hochul got this policy approved by the federal government. I don't think it's so easy for Donald Trump to unapprove it.
But I'm curious about pulling the switch. Is she the one that would have to do pulling the lever, if you will, to stop it? Or could it be stopped by the federal government, despite the laws that are in place that could potentially stop him from doing so?
Well, clearly, I'm not a lawyer, but I can say with assurance that she has a very strong legal case. This policy was voted on by the state legislature of New York, representing the people of New York State. It has been law for years, finally implemented recently. It got full federal approval. It went through all the environmental reviews, tons of lawsuits. It's already run the race and won. So now how does the federal government undo a previous approval? I suspect a lot of courts would say you can't do that after something was voted on by a sovereign state and passed all other tests. So I think she's in a very strong legal position.
Okay. Jonathan, Time magazine pointed out this king talk is not entirely new. Here's the quote. "Some Trump defenders claim the posts are harmless trolling, a reference flown over liberals' heads. I'm going to be the king of New York real estate," Trump told his peers when he was in college. A classmate recalled that to the Boston Globe back in 2018. And he used to think that he was the king of New York. Former Trump Organization executive Barbara Rez told the New York Daily News back in 2021 that the king of New York is back to reclaim the city that he built. Donald Trump Jr. announced that last year when his father held that rally at Madison Square Garden. And we know he's quite impressed by the British monarchy. That persists. So at this time, when he's running a whole country, why still zoom in here on New York?
Because he's petulant. I'll just leave it there. I almost said a few more words, but he's petulant. He's bent on retribution. Remember, yeah, he grew up in New York and made his name in New York, but he always had the Queens-born builder, always had his nose pressed up against the glass that is the high society and elite of Manhattan. And for someone born and raised in Queens, Manhattan is New York City. You make it in Manhattan, you are the king of New York. Fine. That's great when you're a real estate tycoon. That's fine when you're calling in secretly to Page 6 trying to, get your name out there in the gossip pages. But when you are president of the United States and you've run the campaign that you ran, one where you promised to push the limits of presidential power, and now that you are in the office, you have shown since day one that you are willing to blow past the guardrails and really push the limits of presidential power, that when you go, and even if it's ha-ha funny, you're going to proclaim yourself a king, don't be surprised if people don't think that your trolling is funny, or don't think that you're joking. And also, I'll point out one other thing, Alex. It's curious that this comes, I think, at least a week after the Real Time magazine put Elon Musk behind the Resolute desk.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But, I mean, can you just tell me how it's being read there in Washington? I mean, joking or not?
I do not know how it's going over specifically in Washington, but I can tell you this, that among Democrats and those who are concerned about how the president is pushing the limits of presidential power here, that it's just one more piece of evidence, even if he's trolling, even if he's trying to, poke the libs, it's just one more piece of evidence that he couldn't care less about the Constitution and the limits on his power that the Constitution puts on him.
Okay. Mayor, I want to switch gears here because while we've been broadcasting, we found out from a source with direct knowledge telling NBC News that Governor Kathy Hochul, in just about an hour or so from now, is going to make her official announcement that she does not intend to remove Mayor Eric Adams from his post leading this city right now. However, that she will impose some strict guardrails on his administration. Is that the right call?
I think realistically it is. First of all, there's a very strong question about what rises to the level of removal. And I would say when anyone is elected by the people to serve, it should be a very high bar for a governor to remove them. But second, it's a very lengthy, complicated process that literally has never been utilized.
Never done. Yep.
FDR, as governor of New York, attempted to invoke it, didn't need to in the end. So it's never been done. We do know it's complex. We do know it's subject to legal challenge thereafter. So I think the governor, on one level, did a very sort of smart, practical thing, said that's going to be its own morass potentially. But we do need to give the public greater confidence because there's a lot of deep concern right now, especially since last Friday. And I think the whole pivot point here, sadly, was Eric Adams going on Fox and Friends with Homan and leaving the impression that he was captive. I wish he, for his own sake and New York City's sake, had never done that. But I think Hochul now is applying additional measures in a pretty smart way.
Guardrails, yeah, absolutely. And the fact is that the people of New York City elected him. There will be another election in November.
Very soon.
And they can do
so primary
in
in 4
decide.
months.
There you go.